You're listening to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, episode 182. Vegan powerlifter Daniel Austin is here to discuss approaches to vegan advocacy, adapting our training and diet as we age, his history in powerlifting, and the new audiobook version of The Way of the Vegan Meathead.
Welcome to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast. Myth-busting and evidence-based advice to help you kick butt with your health and fitness on a vegan diet. Here's your host, Karina Inkster.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Karina, your go-to no BS vegan fitness and nutrition coach. Today, my guest and I are going to be discussing all things vegan powerlifting. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to let you know about the new resource on our website dedicated to everyone's favorite vegan topic, protein. No sign-up required, no download. Just head to karinainkster.com/protein to check out the article. Do you ever hear any of the following? Don't worry about protein, just eat enough calories and you'll be fine. Or all plant foods contain protein, even spinach and broccoli. Or I get my protein from beans, nut butters, and quinoa. Phrases like these are super common in the vegan world, but each of them is missing some important context. So yes, of course, all plants contain protein. And yes, you can get all the protein you need eating only plants. However, many conversations about vegan protein fail to take into account two key metrics. Number one, protein density, i.e. the percentage of a food's calories that come from protein. And number two, calorie density, i.e. the energy content of a food relative to its weight or volume. So at karinainkster.com/protein, you'll see a chart of 20 vegan foods, and the top section lists the cups of each food you'd need to consume to get 20 grams of protein, and the bottom section lists the calories you'd need to consume to get 20 grams of protein. So sometimes you hear people say, well, even spinach contains protein. Well, yes, technically, but you would need to eat 24 cups of spinach to get 20 grams of protein. So this does not take caloric density into account. And then on the other end of the caloric density spectrum, we have almonds, for example. You would need to eat 642 calories worth of almonds to get 20 grams of protein. So when we talk about plant-based protein sources, we need to take into account caloric density overall and protein density, the percentage of a food's calories that come from protein. Now, in fava bean tofu, for example, 90% of the calories come from protein. In comparison, only 12% of the calories in almonds come from protein. So to see a list of these 20 vegan foods, both their calorie and protein density, and some more detailed explanation, head to karinainkster.com/protein. Introducing my guest today, vegan powerlifter, author of The Way of the Vegan Meathead, Eating for Strength, and hardcore musician Daniel Austin. He was on the show way back in episode 16. So today we're going to discuss what's been going on in his world over the last 6 or so years. And by the way, currently his favorite meal is a bagel breakfast sandwich from Yorgo's Bagel Dashery in Norfolk, Virginia. It's a toasted everything bagel, smoked tofu patty, tempeh bacon strips, vegan cheese slice, and herb veganese, which sounds freaking insane. Here's our conversation. Hey, Daniel, welcome back to the show. So nice to see you after however many years it's been.
Good to see you too. I mean, I think the last time we spoke face-to-face online, because I mean, the last time we saw each other was probably 2018.
Probably.
Is that the only time?
Have we ever actually been in the same room? Oh, yeah. We did a panel discussion. With Zoe.
UBC, right?
Yes. That must have been around the same time because we moved to Powell River in 2018.
Yeah, because I remember my book came out that year, the first edition.
Mm-hmm.
And then our friend Zoe linked us up to do that panel, and that's where we hung out.
Totally.
And then we kept in touch after that online and such. You had me on your show originally back then.
I'll have to find the number. It was episode 30-something, and we're now in the 180s. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and then I remember you got in touch with me about basically like a brief interview for your book.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then we did like a little private like book launch for your subscribers or something like that, where we had like Corinne.
Yeah, there was like a little panel.
Melody,
We did Melody. Yeah, Corinne was there. basically all the heavy hitter, like
Yeah, it was good.
vegan
But I
strong
think that was
people.
the last time we did an interaction like this where we spoke.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
probably what, like 2020, 2021 or something like that?
At the most recent, it was probably 2020, actually. I'm so bad with time frames.
Yeah. I mean,
I
I know I
couldn't
was
tell
in
you.
Texas. I'm in Virginia now. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, what's been going on in Daniel's life? You're still powerlifting, obviously, but like,
Yeah.
what's been going on since 2018?
You know, the book, when it came out in 2018, it surprisingly did very well because I'm used to being a punk musician, grinding really hard and not selling a lot of records. And then when the book came out, I was like, whoa, this is, I mean, I'm not like a best-selling author. However, I was surprised at how significantly people seem to take to the book. So
That's great.
yeah, definitely more successful than any records I've ever made. And that says a lot because, I mean, granted, even though as a musician I've never made a real living, I have been able to see like 30 plus countries playing music. You know, I mean, it's not,
That's
I
amazing.
wouldn't call it unsuccessful. It's just,
It's different.
you know, I mean, you know, in the world of music, it's the musicians get paid last. It's not even if you're leading a genre, unless you're Taylor Swift, you're probably not making any money, you know. So
It's the unfortunate reality.
yeah. So I was just surprised with this book thing. And the cool thing about the Vegan Meathead, Daniel Austin, DBA enterprise I have going is I don't have to pay band members. It's just me. So I was like, oh,
That's a bonus.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a booking agent for a lot of hardcore and punk bands back then. And I had to quit that to just do speaking gigs and promote the book and run the merch store that I do for Vegan Meathead. And I mean, that just kind of ended up taking up so much of my spare time. And so I'm really grateful for that and all the opportunities, like getting to speak in Vancouver and meeting you. That was cool. And so, yeah, I just kept doing that. You know, obviously COVID set us back a bit where there were no veg fests. And I was living in Texas at that time. All the major veg fests in Texas, almost all of them went away and haven't come back.
That's too bad.
Like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. Austin did come back, the Texas Veg Fest in Austin. But I've even noticed since then that the Veg Fest turnouts in general, where I go to like other states, they just don't seem as big as they were 5 years ago. Nonetheless, I mean, there's still cool. I got some Veg Fest coming up for Vegan Meathead, Richmond, Virginia, and Hampton Roads, Virginia, which is like the metro area I'm in, which is Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake.
Nice.
Yeah, so I've got those coming up in October. But yeah, you know, I did a second edition of the book in 2022. You know, I think not until 2020 did I really try to invest on getting that second edition done. I mean, you know this. I mean, you're in the fitness realm, and nutrition is on the forefront of your mind, and when you're talking to your clients, and you know how quickly the landscape of protein and supplements changes.
Absolutely.
You know, the vegan plant-based bandwagon has gotten so big, like every company, whether they're plant-based or not, is getting in on it, and they've got new products like every day. So, you know, in my book, I've tried to create a sort of almanac or a reference point for people to see what's the highest quality protein powder and what's, you know, what kind of supplements you'd be taking. But I try to give product specific, like brand specific overview of that. And there's no way to keep up unless I quit my day job and went all in and had a crew. And, you know, I mean, one thing I'll say about this is, I mean, even though the book has been successful, I've kept a day job. So I'm very, I've got the full 8 hours I got to do there, then get all this stuff done and
That's
train and do band stuff. And yeah, I just can't, I have too many irons in the fire. And what I learned playing music full time years ago when I did that full time was if I want to hate the thing I love, I should do it all the time.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
Yeah, I haven't been willing to go there with this because I do love doing this. I do love being asked to speak about vegan stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get back in the groove of working on the second edition of the book because I was very busy with the first edition, and I had other projects, music, other writing stuff. Like I had a novel come out in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Not vegan related at all, just, you know, just another dimension of things I do. And
that's cool.
Once I got that out of the way, it's like, okay, I can work on the second edition of this. Second edition was even better received than the first, and I was very grateful for that. And then, but, you know, what people want these days is an audiobook. So I invested in a little sound equipment to try and do that myself. And what I learned the hard way was that editing audio for audiobook specifications takes a long time.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I used to edit my own podcast back in the day before I got an editor. And even that, I mean, we're talking like, what, a 40-minute episode every 2 weeks? Pain in the ass. So I cannot imagine what that would be like for a full book.
Yeah. So, my audiobook, as we're talking today, I got notified that it's available on Audible as of last night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So this is good timing
awesome.
here that we got on this call.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's hitting all the main apps this week. But what I'll say when editing that, I would say on average to get all the little ASMR noises out, all the breaths out, and pick the best line. I mean, to get through about 4 minutes took me, once I got good at it, like an hour.
Wow. Sounds about right.
It's just so time consuming. Yeah. So that took longer than I wanted. I started recording that in 2022. I finished recording it within a matter of months, but then editing took me the past couple of years in my spare time. And there were months where I was like, I don't want to sit down and do this today.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So, but it's out, and I've been busy with that. Now I can move on to other things, do the fun part of just like talking about the release of it, and get back to doing a little speaking circuit and promoting it. Thinking I might do podcast episodes myself, just to, talk to expert, athletic and strong vegans. And, it's one way to also promote my book, but also I want the people engaged with me online who follow me and stuff to have access to great information about strength hacks, diet hacks, how to make this easier. Because, I spent a lot of years sucking before I got decent at anything.
We all do. That's how it works.
Back in the 2010s, I didn't really know anybody when I started doing this. I went to a corporate gym and didn't know another vegan there, didn't know really any powerlifters. So it was a long road to get to the bottom of the ladder. In terms of that. That's
one way of putting it. It's a long road to get to the bottom of the ladder, i.e. the starting point. Yeah.
But things have worked out well. Like I'm 41 now, and I'm feeling the effects of powerlifting competitively for 10 years straight. So that's something we could get into.
For sure. Well, how does that look? I mean, last time we chatted, you were a 35-year-old athlete, which is quite different in terms of sport longevity, right?
Right. Well, my first competition, I was 32.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I was still pretty, 3 years in, you're still pretty fresh. You could still make some, you're beyond beginner gains if you're 3 years in, but intermediate gains, those are still can be significant sometimes. But
sure.
Now I'm in advanced stage and in my 40s. That's a compounded handicap. Because the progress is going to be slow anyway if you've been at it for 5+ years.
Right.
In fact, sometimes I competed twice this year already, which was a mistake. And I'm competing next month with the Plant Belt team again. And I couldn't say no because I love getting together with the team. But 3 competitions in a year when you're 41 and you haven't taken a break in 10 years, I'm going to chiropractic treatment currently. I'm doing, I feel like I'm in Portlandia, the show where I'm the mayor and I'm sitting on a stability ball half the day when I'm working because my hip seize up on me just sitting, just squatting all these years. I don't have like a diagnosable injury, but I'm just achy. Hips are tight. I got to do a lot to try to release the tension there and be able to function. And this year I did put up a PR squat. Went back to Texas and did like an international masters competition and I improved my state record in Texas as my last competition as a Texan lifter. But after that, it's been rough trying to get back to where I was just a couple years ago. Overall, my totals this year have not been as good as my totals 2 years ago.
Interesting. What's the general lifespan of an elite powerlifter? I don't really know. You're like retired at 32 as a swimmer, for example, but what's it like in powerlifting? I don't know anything about that world.
I don't know many that have done it 10 years straight. For example, the captain on the Plant Belt team, Ryan Stills, who I think would be a great person for you to interview if you ever get the chance. Because he's been in powerlifting longer than anyone I know, vegan or not.
Wow.
But if you look at his stats, like currently he just had a shoulder replaced. He's 49.
Oh, wow.
But he started doing this when he was like 18, 19. So he's done it like 30 years. But if you look, there was years he took off and did other things and came back to it. And that's what a lot of people tell me that have been in it a long time is, yeah, you usually kind of have these phases in your life where you step away, you heal back up, you come back fresh, then you have a new wind, and then you exhaust that. And at some point you got to call it because you'll just never get better than you were at a certain age, right?
Right. Yeah, I kind of hear that, but it's hard to do, right? If that's like your thing, walking away from it for 6 to 12 months is huge.
I mean, I'm just kind of dumb. Like, oh, what else am I going to do? This is what I like to do.
I know. But so is that basically what's required? I mean, I have to do a similar thing for my shoulder. I've got to walk away from swimming for multiple months, which technically you're supposed to do every year anyways, but I haven't. So much like you, I've been swimming consistently years and years and have not given my shoulder a break. So I got to do the same thing, but I'm like, but I don't want to. But I know it's in my best interest.
Yeah. What I'm going to do, like I'm competing next month with the team, I decided the last time I had a real surge in my gains was the COVID shutdown.
Interesting.
I couldn't go to the gym for like 2 months. Couldn't have weight on my back for like 2 months. I did some deadlifts in a friend's garage, but he didn't have a squat rack or anything. So if I wanted to squat, I could clean, press, and then...
Yeah.
But, you know, at that point, it's like you're doing body weight at most.
Pretty much.
Because you're limited by your press overhead. So there was almost 2 months where I didn't have the bar on my back compressing my spine and screwing me up. And when I came back, you know, it took me almost 2 months to get back to where I was. But then that year, by far, just consistently my best numbers on everything. That's the last time I PR'd everything.
Oh, wow.
That was 2020, you know. In 2021, it carried over. But after 2021... Yeah, 2022 was an okay year, but the progress diminished every year after.
Interesting.
And I haven't taken a week off in any of those years since. So I'm just thinking, maybe I'll just take a month off and come back and then do a lot of variation, a lot of more functional training, maybe not squat. You know, my coach says, yeah, I'm going to have you pushing and pulling a sled. You know, you're not going to be squatting for a while. So... I'm looking forward to that because I think I always think of when Louis Simmons, I'm not like a disciple of Westside or anything, but I've listened to him on podcasts enough. And one thing he says, sometimes you can't get stronger doing the same thing.
That's a good point.
At a point, you know, if you're an advanced lifter, you have to find tricks and strategies to really trick your body into growing. And if you do the same movements all the time, you're just going to wear out your joints.
Yep, 100%.
So at 41, that's where I'm at. I've got to re-strategize, and I need to be real with myself. Don't compete 3 times a year.
Right.
Like earlier this year, I traveled to Las Vegas. It's like my 5th time going to drug-tested nationals. I did 3 Virginia state records there.
Amazing.
But it was not, you know, I was aggravated because it was not my best. I should have had all 4 of the open records to claim, but my squat was just beat up. My hips were trashed. I was frustrated about that, and I've been trying to rehab my hips ever since then to do this meet next month. But, you know, I also traveled across 2 time zones for that, and that could have taken a toll on my performance.
100%.
So, you know, I just got really disillusioned with all this effort I'm putting in, thinking that I'm as invincible as I was when I was 35, which to most people is not a good age to be invincible, but since I started doing this at like 32, I was still pretty fresh then. But now I just got to be smarter. Like I need to compete less. I need to train more wisely. I need to take more time off. And so that's what I got to do from here on out. I think next year I'm going to stay to a local meet, get those state records I missed, just be totally fresh, and maybe just compete once next year.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I want to keep doing this when I'm 50, 9 years from now, I got to be smart about my choices.
Well, it's a good point. I think we all do. But when so much of that is tied to our identity, like I am a powerlifter, I am a swimmer, then it's really hard to take time off. But I think that's probably what we need most.
Yeah. And not only that, it's really hard to want to do something else. Because, I mean, powerlifting, I know some people think that the training you do for powerlifting is boring. because you got longer breaks. You're actually not doing that many exercises.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the most athletic sport. It's just about being strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, my fiance, she's into CrossFit. So she's like, oh, when you take a break from powerlifting, you can do CrossFit. And I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those people.
One of those people.
No disrespect.
God.
I mean, I'm wearing a CrossFit gym shirt right now. I mean, I have a lot of respect for that sport the more I get familiar with it, because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different kind of conditioning. I've done it a number of times, got my ass humbled every time. But then, when my CrossFit friends want to do a squat, bench, deadlift day, they get frustrated that they're not stronger. And I'm like, specificity of training, my friend.
There you go.
If I wanted to be faster and have better endurance, yeah, I'd do what you do all the time. If you want to be strong, you're going to have to do what I do.
100%.
Yeah, I couldn't see myself doing something like that on a regular basis. Couldn't see myself running on a regular. I haven't run in years, Things like that. It's not that I dislike them. I used to cycle a lot. I mean, I even did run a lot before I got into powerlifting. But ever since I got into this, and especially since I started competing in this, it's just the bug. It's just like, that's my thing.
That's
what motivates me.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I mean, I think when I take a little time off, I'm gonna hike more, maybe swim more, just do outdoor things more.
It's a good call. See what happens. It's probably what you need. Have you changed your nutrition at all? Is that something that comes to mind, like, as now older than 35? Has anything changed in the last 6 years or so?
Yeah, actually. And, this is one reason with the audiobook coming out. I mean, it's still based on a diet that I updated a couple years ago, or 3 years ago. And in my 40s, I noticed that my LDL cholesterol is going up. And as people know, who have read the book or are familiar with what I'm about, I've always been a high-fat, high-protein vegan. This high-fat consumption, especially for men, is more of a advantage in the strength realm. I don't think it's necessary if you're trying to be more endurance-oriented, and I've always said that. Now, the weird thing is, in my family, my mother is a vegan. She's been vegan almost as long as me, and she was vegetarian since before I was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and she's also less than 5 feet tall and about 100 pounds. So she's a very small person. But anyway.
Small human.
She is the kind of vegan that eats a lot of salad and fruit and, like really whole food, plant-based stuff. She's not big on the fake meat stuff. So she doesn't eat like meat. But she also has, in her old age, because she's in her 70s, elevated LDL. Now, it's not that mine is high. It's higher than I think it should be as a vegan.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? Like I actually hit the total cholesterol of like 200, like it was like 207 last year when I turned 40, a little after 40. And that alarmed me because I thought, just 5 years ago, it was like 115 total.
Wow.
It was excellent. And I had already been doing my diet with the high fat stuff and the high protein stuff for 3-4 years. And I hadn't seen any real effect on my blood work or anything. But that was one thing I noticed. But then my father, who's not a vegan, who lives on an island, is real big into seafood and also bacon cheeseburgers and things like that, and doesn't really eat a lot of vegetables. He's got higher cholesterol than me. I mean, he's in his 60s, does not eat well. And then he says, oh, well, Daniel, that runs in our family. I usually say that runs in our family because you guys eat like crap. But then why does my mom, on the other side, from a different family, who eats very healthily, who has a very healthy body composition, why does she have elevated LDL? So it's something that came to my attention of, I know that lifetime exposure to LDL is increased risk for heart problems later on. And that's something at 41, it's still young, you can manage it. And so what I did was I stopped cooking as much stuff in oil. Not like demonizing oil, saying I can never have oil. I just started air frying more stuff, like my vegan chicken strips and stuff like that. And then the number went down like 20 points in 2 months, and things are more balanced. So, and that's not something like an update that I was able to make for this book that I recorded to audio 2 years ago. But it's something I definitely want people to be aware of, because when you change your diet and you make a new kind of fitness and nutrition lifestyle, you don't know what your blood work's going to be like in 10 years.
It's a good point.
And I'm now 10 years into this diet. Do I think that the diet specifically was causing my LDL to go up? I mean, I've talked to multiple nutritionist friends about this. They would say, oh, well, just, usually the nutritionist people are like, don't eat so much fake meat. Usually they are. And I'm like, well, that's my shtick, like that's the only way. Like I was back in 2013 trying to move the dial. Like, how am I going to finally gain weight to get strong, like competitively strong? And for me, the dial never started to move in the direction I wanted it to until I increased the fat and the protein pretty abnormally, beyond what most people consider a normal, healthy, balanced diet. I know you had Katya Kovachiva on recently, and I listened to the episode, and Katya is very smart. She knows her shit. She had said, "Oh, Daniel, he recommends like 40% fat calories of your total calories," which I'm saying you could do up to that. I wouldn't really ever go over that. But that's the kind of manipulation I had to do with my macros to get my body to transform and respond to the training the way I wanted 10 years ago. I don't think my fat is that high in terms of caloric balance these days. And I am trying to think about longevity and overall health, but I'm probably still in the 30% range.
That's usually what we recommend for people who are strength training specifically.
Yeah, exactly. So, my book, I want people to know that it's a blueprint for your own experimentation to find out how to help you move the dial. Because we know that when people come to us for coaching, for nutrition advice, usually this is a numbers game. Are your calories meeting your demand for your physical exertion? Are you eating enough protein for recovery? Or is your mineral intake sufficient for recovery and hormonal balance and all that? Is your fat consumption sufficient for hormonal balance? Most people, they find once they start tracking this stuff, it's not. And being ambitious as I was 10, 12, 14 years ago when I started training and stuff, I went hard. Like, I'm going to push these numbers to make this happen because I'm tired of being skinny. Because, that's how I weighed 135 pounds. I was like, I got to change this, so.
Well, a diet for performance, though, in a lot of cases looks quite different than a diet for insert other goal. Longevity, lowering cholesterol, endurance sports, whatever that variable is, like the highly competitive strength athlete diet is exactly that. It's so you can compete with folks who are the best in the world and get state records and go to nationals. It's not necessarily so I can live to be 101 and be fully functional.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't appeal. Living that long doesn't appeal to me. Because I know my deadlift's going to go way down by then. That's just going to be.
Oh my God. So if you can't deadlift, life is not worth it anymore. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I'll get into something else for a while, but I like tonight, after we get done with this, I go to the gym and I have probably my biggest deadlift before the next meet. And then it's all tapering off for the next 4 weeks. And I am pumped, motivated,
Well, one of my music friends, actually the drummer in the band I play in, he's a doctor. It's a lot of high functioning people in music, right? Like yourself, you have books and you have a job and there's so many things going on, but you're also a pro musician. Anyway, so the drummer had an interesting point. He's like, everything I do in my life, like he does CrossFit, he does mountain biking, everything that he does except for music has an end point or has a peak that he's going to reach at some point, which will then start decreasing based on age, except for music. He's like, you know what? Technically, I could be a better drummer at 65 than I am now in my 40s with technique work and with just the time put in and the experience. Like, that's actually kind of an interesting point. And I didn't really consider that because also everything I do other than music is physical. So it's the same kind of thing. There's going to be an end point. There's going to be a lifespan of that activity probably.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you on that and I agree with him. I mean, I think about when I'm that old that I can't outperform myself physically. I want to be a better rider, So,
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Flexing the brain will be more important at that point. But I still don't look forward to that day because it's just a reminder of your mortality.
Sure.
Like I've been through parts of my life where I thought, I don't know if I like this life thing very much. But lately, I'm so busy and I'm so immersed in just doing all these projects and everything in my life's turned out pretty good. And I actually think I like it.
Well, that's good to hear.
And it's been a long road to be able to say that. I think the stimulation, like just the exertion and the goal setting, I think powerlifting and finding the mode of training that works for me, that motivates me, has been one of the most organizing principles of my life. Because prior to this, I was the kind of person that would sleep till 1 p.m. And just eat cereal all the time. And even though I've never been a drug user or a drinker, maybe I was a little nihilistic and unmotivated. I mean, I always had music. I was very motivated with that. I mean, I remember going to a therapist in my 20s. And, I thought maybe I was depressed or something. And she says, you're not depressed. You have all these goals. You're going on tour with your band. Like, you have all these things on your calendar. Like, you just have a very grim outlook on humanity. That's...
Do you think veganism has something to do with that? I mean, this is pre-vegan days for you, but...
I was vegan then.
Do we have more depression in the vegan world because we're disillusioned and just like fed up with other humans?
I think it's a process, and I hope to see people go through the curve of it all, the trajectory, and arrive at a place where, kind of like Joseph Campbell said, and I think he was paraphrasing Buddha, that you must participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world because you can't fix those. All you can do is really lead by a positive example and live a life that you love. And other people, that will increase the amount of joy and love in the world.
Right.
And that's kind of where I am, because I used to go to like McDonald's and fur protests and stuff all the time. And I'm not saying those things don't have their place. But yeah, you immerse yourself in a lot of angry people. And these days with social media, all those people are just trying to find reasons to tear each other apart. I think they all want to be the most important activist person, and it can be real toxic in that kind of social circle. So I'm very weary of those social circles now. And back then, you try to, and I'm not saying that protest, like I used to go protest the circus, and Ringling Brothers did stop using elephants, like that's a big deal. But it took like 30 years of being a pest to get the public to realize like it's not cool. But along the way, the interpersonal interactions can be less than desirable, and it's because you're dealing with a lot of young people or a lot of people who haven't grown up.
Which is the same thing, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's even more disheartening when somebody's 45 and they're acting like a 17-year-old.
Good point. Yes.
But yeah, so to me, I just started going to the gym and focusing on improving myself. And the cool thing that's happened is, I don't argue with people about veganism. Like, I go to this gym with really strong dudes. A lot of them are on steroids and stuff, and they're sharing my book release post today.
That's awesome.
And I'm just like, we're making inroads here. We're building bridges. And these are people that they believe they love animals. I'm not going to tell them they don't. Some of them are in dog and cat rescue and stuff like that. And that's great, and they still eat cows and pigs and chickens, but you got to start somewhere. The cool thing is they're open to talking about it, and they're curious, and they're actually curious about how someone like me does what I do. I mean, like when the Plant Built team was at Mr. America in New Jersey last year, we had these just like old meathead guys coming up to us. Like, you guys aren't just good for vegans. You guys are good. And I heard all this stuff about soy, but you're all out here talking about tofu, and maybe there's something to it. And the fact that just the least suspecting people you think to hear say something like that are saying it to your face, and they're shaking your hand and you're having a laugh with them is, to me, that's something. And I never got that kind of feedback when I was shouting at people for being a murderer.
Yeah, well, as you say, there's probably a time and a place for different types of activism, right?
Yeah, totally.
Things hit differently in different contexts and with different individuals. But I'm with you. I mean, you can look at all of these activities as advocacy of different types. What we do with writing, for example, I mean, technically that's a form of advocacy. We're not yelling from rooftops, but we're making accessible useful information.
Yeah.
And like you said, people at the gym are getting interested and they're sharing it on your behalf and making inroads, as you say. That's huge.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily involve like standing there with a megaphone yelling at people.
The positive feedback loop is strong in whatever I'm doing right now. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. I do look at activism, especially the kind of boots to the ground, making your voice heard kind of activism. I do look at it as a kind of military service. Like maybe early on in your life, you put 2 or 3 years in being loud, being proud. And most of us need to grow out of that. and find a more middle path to gracefully progress ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
And if we don't seek something like that, we never get tired of causing problems. It's indicative of some red flags that you probably need to go to a therapist for. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that a lot. And sometimes I just shrug my shoulders. It's like, yes, it's the age. It's an age thing. Or, unfortunately, mass movements, they attract a lot of people who are just unhappy with themselves too. I mean, there's a factor of that too. And
sure.
Because I don't want to say like everyone on our side is always right, because they're not.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we are missing, maybe not just in veganism, but in any sort of social movement, is the ability to critique ourselves and each other constructively.
Yeah, totally.
Because a lot of times any critique is seen as, oh, but now you're not supporting veganism anymore. But actually what we're doing is trying to make ourselves more effective.
Yeah, we need to be, at least a swath of us need to be relatable to people outside of our immediate circle. And I mean, we know this. I mean, I know you've heard this too. The Whole Foods plant-based movement,
right,
will come at people like us saying that we're not promoting health. And I'm like, well, yeah, I said that a million times in my book.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to mistake the advice I'm giving. But isn't it useful in some capacity for some people, at least, to promote strength or athleticism over health? I mean, the world craves spectacle, often through athleticism. And to have more and more athletes doing the plant-based vegan thing, I think it makes a big difference in terms of reaching people that we otherwise would not reach.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
Has the scene changed? Like, think back to 2018-ish in powerlifting. We were talking about, like, you'd wear the vegan socks while competing and all this kind of stuff. And people would be like, oh my God, he's vegan. What the fuck? Where are things at? Have things changed in the last 6 years?
Yeah. That has changed. And I would say, I remember I did a powerlifting meet in San Antonio, Texas, which is near Fort Hood military base. You get a lot, and in powerlifting, it's kind of a conservative sport. You get a lot of military people, cops, these kinds of personalities. I remember there was a military guy there, an older guy. He was like a career, kind of like more like an administrative guy at this point in his life. But he saw my socks. I mean, we had been just kind of broing down, warming up all day. And then when I always wait till the deadlift to put my socks on that say vegan. And usually by that point in the day, I've earned respect. And I got first place at that meet. And this guy was like, oh, for real? Like, I saw the Game Changers. And then my daughters were talking about going vegan. And I was like, but don't do that. But then I saw the Game Changers. And I thought, okay, well, maybe you'll be all right. So can you tell me more about that? And there was no stigma of, for real, dude? Like, what are you doing here? I mean, because like I said before, 2015, 2016, 2017, unless my team was there and I was just there by myself, even if I won a medal, first, second place, I would get joked walking up to get it, walking off the podium, like, no, it's fine, because that's just part of making friends. People are going to bust your balls, but it's not like that anymore. There's like no jokes about it anymore. And now it's like, hey, like I said about last year, Mr. America, so many, the meet organizers, so many of us were setting records. And then just other lifters there were just like, hey, you guys are not just good for vegans. Like, y'all are good. Like, tell us about this.
That's so awesome. So it's more curiosity and openness now than defensiveness, it sounds like.
Yes. I do think that the Game Changers was a big deal, but I think it kind of falsely set up people's expectations, especially in the strength world, because it didn't really go into the strength diet stuff so much. Right.
That's true.
It
didn't have a lot of hands-on, here's how to do it.
Right. I remember when the gyms opened back up in Texas in 2020, I remember there were some young kids I started talking to about powerlifting. They were powerlifting in that gym, and they said they wanted to try it. So they tried to go vegan, but they didn't listen to me. They didn't get my book. After like a month, they're like, yeah, man, I just don't feel good. I'm tired. And I'm like, well, are you tracking? Like, are you eating protein? Are you equating calories? How much fat are you eating, And they're like, they just didn't want to do that. I mean, obviously these things are a little easier to hit intuitively when you eat high fat, high protein junk food, like a lot of young people do, like fast food and stuff. And they weren't into it for an animal rights perspective, which is, to me, what's going to make most people stick with it, the principle.
Yes, definitely.
So I think that movie kind of set people up with a bit of self-interest. Like, oh, this will actually be an advantage. So I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had bodybuilders like Kai Green selling a plant-based. He doesn't care about that. You know, I mean, he doesn't. Yeah, just because he eats some vegetables doesn't mean he's plant-based, but everybody was trying to get in on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that effect carried all the way down to just your novice lifter, young guy in the gym who thought, oh, yeah, like I saw that movie. Maybe I'll do that and it'll give me some advantage. And then if you don't dial in the strength diet right, because as we're saying, it's not like any other kind of diet.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, it's not going to help them unless they equate protein, calories, minerals, fat.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I think the expectations thing and also doing it for reasons that are only about performance or only about health, those two things together usually mean someone's not going to stick with it. So the ethics piece, like sometimes the ethics piece comes down the road for people, and that's totally fine. That happens a lot where people come to veganism for some other reason, but then they're like, oh, but wait, this is actually an ethical decision too. And then they learn more about it, and then they're long-term vegans at that point.
Yeah. In my book, in the second edition, I made a chart of the opposition foods. How much protein and fat and all that is in real murdered animal food.
Interesting.
And,
okay.
And I got some pushback from some people who were offended that I called it murdered chicken, milk of raped cow. Because the language they use to soften these products, I mean, they forget this is not ethical. These are raped cows. Mm-hmm. These are murdered pigs. These are murdered chickens. These are imprisoned pigs,
mm-hmm.
That's what they do to these animals. Some people, it's not that they don't have a heart. It's just that they don't want to think about it.
Yeah. They're intentionally shutting it off for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can't think about it, you're probably not going to stick with it. The choice to be some form of a vegan, plant-based person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Plant-based is such a loose term.
Well, plant-based, I feel like these days is more of a marketing term. Like, oh, let's not use vegan because it has baggage and scares people off. Let's use plant-based instead.
Right. I mean, if Tyson Chicken can sell plant-based nuggets with eggs in them, that.
Good point.
That ain't right.
That ain't right.
That's just wrong.
That's just wrong. Well, Daniel, where can people go to get their hands on the new edition of your book and the audiobook?
Yeah, the audiobook is now on Audible and Amazon. And, because Amazon and Audible kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond the launch of my book, most of the sales people go to Amazon anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way I can stop that. So let them,
that's how it works.
Have it, But yeah, that's the number one place people are going to find is Audible and Amazon. If it's not on Apple by end of today, it'll probably be there by tomorrow.
Perfect.
And then, I did select the distribution option when I registered. Audible has a website called ACX, which is where you format everything and submit it.
Okay.
And you can pick, do you want a higher royalty to only go through Audible and Apple? Or do you want a lower royalty to get into as many apps as you can get into? And I wanted it to get out to as many people as possible, so I selected. So hopefully it's going to show up in other apps. So I recommend people just check whatever app they like in the coming weeks, whatever app they use, whether it's Spotify, whatever, see if it's available.
Brilliant.
If it's not, let me know. Even maybe message that app or something. Let them know you want to see the title.
Mm-hmm.
I am selling it directly on my websites. So there's veganmeathead.com and there's daniel-austin.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably it. I mean, you can direct order or order online from your main conglomerate.
Source of choice. Your main conglomerate.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on the audiobook. Congrats on the new edition. That's a huge project.
Thank you.
I can only imagine the insane number of hours that took. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it's a big relief. On to other things now. Can't wait.
Finally.
And do something else.
Well, so great to catch up. Thanks so much for chatting with me again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, same.
Daniel, thank you again for your second appearance on the show. Always great to connect. Check out our show notes and get your hands on Daniel's new audiobook at nobullshitvegan.com/182. And don't forget to read our protein density and caloric density article at karinainkster.com/protein. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the No Bullshit Vegan podcast at nobullshitvegan.com.